So happy Friday,
Hello.
everyone. Welcome to our webinar about out-of-the-box reports in SAP Business One. Today, we're not going to talk about customization. We are going to talk about what is available out of the box in terms of reporting and try to pass you the knowledge. Maybe some of those you already know or already using. We are very excited to share that knowledge and maybe share with you some new things you didn't know about some of the reports and give you maybe a couple of tools for customers report. Very happy to present today with Beth Cameron. Hi, Beth.
Hi, everybody.
And with that being said, we're going to start the meeting. So the agenda for today, we broke it into different parts: financial reports, business partner reports, inventory, sales, and additional reporting options. So we're going to start with the financial reports as part of our agenda. If you have any questions, feel free to type it in the chat area or feel free to ask a question. And good morning, Karina, and good morning, Robert. We see you on the camera.
Good morning.
And we're going to start with the general ledger report in SAP Business One. And the general ledger report is really a set of hundreds of reports. And I'm going to go to our SAP environment and we'll give Beth control so start talking about that. So,
And Oren, it looks like the screen's not updating on the GoToMeeting.
thank
Just to
you.
let you know.
Yeah,
There we go.
thank you. So going back to the presentation, we are going to talk about financials, business partners, inventory, sales, and additional reporting. Under each section, we have the reports that we thought are interesting to look at. Either many of our customers are not familiar with them, or are I'm going to unmute some people, so and I'm going to unmute later. Okay, that sounds better. Okay, and with that being said, we're going to start with the general ledger report. Let's go to SAP. As you can see at the end of all the reports, there are sections for each module or for each aspect. We're going to start under the financial, under the accounting to go to the general ledger. The general ledger is really a dream of every controller or finance person because everything you want to know about accounting can be done through this report. And as you can see, there are a lot of options in this report. You can look at that from business partner perspective, customers or vendors, or from accounts perspective. So normally you would like to choose either or, because if you choose both, you will see duplicate results from the business partner perspective and from the GL accounts perspective. The big benefits of that report is the ability to have different options if you want it summarized or sorted, or if you want to see all the posting or only the not fully reconciled or externally reconciled and things of that nature. So a lot of options here. You can choose all the accounts, you can choose dates and things of that nature. But the really big thing about that report is the expanded function here. As you click on the expanded, you could choose what you want to see. So for example, if you are looking for specifically a transaction of a specific amount, you can check that here and choose your specific amount. If you look at all your AR invoices, you're going to check AR invoices, and then the system will bring only AR invoices report and things of that nature. The nice thing about that report is also the ability to save different selection criteria. So if you are running the same report every day, you can save that selection criteria and that will be saved. So for example, the way to do that is a little bit uncomfortable, but if I go to the general ledger and I go to add mode, like as it was a document, I can go to add mode and say like AR invoices, for example, uncheck business partners, check all the accounts, do the expanded and do maybe AR invoice and credit memos, for example, update and okay, that will give me only the AR invoices. Again, with drill downs, obviously within the report itself, you can always copy table and paste it to Excel. You can print it if you wish. There are a lot of columns here, but you could select what you're going to see in the report and in which order using the form settings and the table formats. So there is a lot more information that can be exposed by checking the visible checkbox. Once you get the report you want and you want to save it, you can just click on the save. And then next time you are going into the same general ledger report, you can select the AR invoices from the list. In my case, I have also unclear checks, for example. So in that case, I chose the display unreconciled externally, everything that is within the assets, and that will give me all the unclear checks that we have with our vendors. Does that make sense? Any questions about that? Okay, so with no questions, I'm going to move to the next report, the budget report.
Thanks, Oren. So the budget report, this is something I would say for budgets, probably, I don't know, maybe half and half of the customers use them, but I think it's a really powerful tool in SAP to be able to bring your budget in there and then use it for different reporting features. So I know this isn't kind of a configuration webinar, so we're not going to go through the specifics of actually setting up a budget in SAP, although if you have questions, feel free to ask. But essentially, once you do set up that budget in SAP, you'll set up a budget scenario. One thing you can do to set that up, if you don't want to go through and allocate your budget to all your different accounts, you can just take your prior year actuals and create a budget based off of that. So maybe you want to take your prior year and, with a growth of 10%. And so you can create a budget that way. It's a lot easier if that's what you want to do. But essentially, once you have created this budget in SAP, you can go into, so this is where you would see your budget in here, have your different budget scenarios. So we'll go to our main budget. And this is a test system. So looks like we don't have a lot of info in here for the budget, but if and when we do, this is where you would see it. And then so to report on that, we'll go down here in our financials. We'll want to go to financial reports and then budget reports. So one of the basic budget reports is it's called just the budget report. Basically, that's just going to show you essentially what your budget shows you. You can check different accounts. You can do it monthly, quarterly, annually, things like that, and then just execute here. If you want to see down more levels and see kind of into the GL account level, you can see it that way. So that one's just kind of our basic budget report. The other one that we think is probably the most helpful in terms of these budget reports is that profit and loss statement budget report. So as you probably know, in your other financial reports, you can run just a profit and loss statement, but this helps you actually compare it against your budget. So you can take what your expected income and expenses are and in your budget and compare that to all of your actual income and expenses there. So yeah, again, a test system. So we don't have much data in there for our budget, but if we did, then you would see kind of the comparison there. And there are a couple more budget reports to explore if you wanted to explore those as well. But I think the main two that we use the most and see customers using the most are this budget report and the profit and loss statement budget report.
Thank you. And one more thing to mention is far off settings. When you set up the budget there, you can import budget from using DTW, so your numbers can be done in Excel or through a forecast and things of that nature, and then can get imported to SAP. The other thing, if you just want to start with budget, if you're just starting with budget, the other thing you can do is define a budget scenario that will be based on previous year numbers and maybe with a growth percentage you are looking to add. So that will be the easiest way to start working with the budget.
Awesome. Thanks, Oren.
All right, so the other thing we're going to go through after the budget is the comparison report. There are few reports that allow you to do comparison versus comparison between this year or last year, or comparison between one company that you have in SAP and maybe a separate legal entity. So we wanted to introduce the comparison report and make sure everybody aware of that function. So let's go back to SAP, and under the financial reports, you will see consolidated reports. So let's go to the financial reports into the comparison, and you will see three different reports: the balance sheet, trial balance, and P&L. For example, if we go to the P&L, it allows you to define a period. Let's do that from 2018 to the end of 2018. That's the current period. And what do you want to compare it to? So in this case, I will do 2017. So we compare this year results to last year results. You can do that just by the end of the quarter or whatever the time frame you want to execute. And you can click on the change if you ever want to change between, if you ever want to compare between two separate companies, between this database and the comparison database could be something different. So you can see two different legal entities in the same report. Different options of display, if you want to see the difference in percentage, accounts with balance zero, and different other options. And you also have, like in the general ledger report, you also have different segmentations and expanded that allow you to filter what you want to see. So if you use chart of account segmentations, you will be able to filter the division or the region, depends how you set up your segmentations. In addition, the expanded allow you to select P&L only based on projects or branch or product line. Again, depends how your setup is. Revaluation allow you to see your numbers using a different currency that is defined in your system and allow you to give it a fixed rate and things of that nature. Let's see if we execute the report, what are we going to see? We're going to see basically the traditional P&L of the current period compared with the past year, and to see the differences. And we can see that in the level 1 of the chart of account, we can display the subtotals if we wish, and it will have an effect when we go to other levels. But if we go to the GL account level, we will see every account and its discrepancy. And it's a good tool for the controller or CFO or CEO to go through different numbers. And when you have a bigger percentage difference that is negative, you could really analyze better your financial reports. Any questions? Okay. So with that being said, we're going to go to different cash flow options. The cash flow is really out of the box again. Very, very good tool. And there are three different cash flow reports available out of the box. One of them, the one you see on the screen, is only available on HANA. I'll allow you to see that in a graphical way. Today, we're going to mainly talk about the first two, the cash flow reports and the statement of cash flow, and see the differences between those cash flow reports. They're available out of the box. You don't need to do much setup to do that, but there are two GL account setup that you need to do in order to see those accounts. So let's go back to the system and let's review them. So the GL account, let's see first the chart of account. So if we go to the revenue, or I'll just choose the random accounts, there are two things to define. So if I go, for example, to one of our cash accounts, there are two checkboxes relevant to cash flow. One of them can be changed after you check it or after you have transactions, and one of them will be grayed out once you start working with a GL account. The cash flow relevant is relevant for the statement of cash flow, which is the second report presented, and the cash account is really for the first report I'm going to present. So let's start with the first one, cash account. So if I go under the financial reports, we're going to look at two of the reports, the cash flow and the statement of cash flow. Let's start with the first one that is correlated with that definition of the cash account. So the cash flow is a tool that allows you to present your cash flow in so different ways. And you can see that you can define the framework, what's the selection criteria of the dates you're looking to see. And on the right side, you have the definitions of the cash, which accounts are included, all of the accounts that are checked with cash flow. Let me close the other reports. So all the GL accounts that are checked with cash account will be presented here, and you can define which one to see and which one not. The second level of certainty is going to be the credit card that are going to be presented over here, and that will work when you receive or send out outgoing or incoming payments that are with the credit card tab. Checks and business partners, basically open debt with customers and open debt with the vendors, so AR and AP. In addition, on the left side, you can present the report in many different ways. You can have a daily cash flow, weekly, monthly, and things of that nature. And you can decide which transaction to present, maybe reoccurring transactions or posting you want to see there, maybe not. You can also define which reoccurring transaction you want to consider that report, and you can also filter using those three buttons. You can have opening balances. You can also have like manual transactions, things that you think will come in the future, but you haven't recorded them from a financial perspective. So for example, if I add today's date and I'm going to say, I know I'm going to have some marketing expense that, next month, but nothing has been recorded. I can associate that with a specific project. And I can say, the outgoing total of that marketing expense is going to be $25,000. And it's going to happen maybe not today, maybe 11/06 in a couple of weeks. What that will do, that will incorporate that into the cash flow reports with the security level we think it's related to. So maybe it's going to be vendor forecast in that case. With no more questions, maybe I'll execute that report. Maybe I will execute that to a future date so we can see that marketing expense as well. So let's go, until the end of November. Executing that report will show us basically the cash flow. Because we run it weekly, it will show us week after week what our cash flow looks like. And as you can see on the left side, each week comes in a separate line, and it will show you the cash flow and the debits and the credits and the total after hitting those transactions. And also on the top, you can define which to include, which not. For example, customer forecast, which was my manual transaction I just did now, could be checked or none based on my selection criteria. Okay, I actually did the vendor forecast in that case. In addition, if you want to drill down, you can always open and expand, so you can see which transaction affected your cash flow, and like everywhere in SAP, you can always drill down into that transaction. So you can see that in that case, it came from a reoccurring transaction in this case. You can expand everything if you want to get granular, so you can see all those transactions. In this case, for example, it's an open invoice, it haven't been paid. In this case, it's reoccurring transaction. Any questions? So with no more questions, I will go to the statement of cash flow. And this is more of a report for normally sometimes asked by investors or auditors, things of that nature. You could also define your period. For example, in this case, I'm going to do from the beginning of the year, 1/1. Sorry. Can do previous period. So that was the previous period. So I'm going to do this year and last year. And you can have different templates. In this case, I have only the default. But that will show me a statement of cash flow as normally been asked by investors. So it will show you all the different line items and work in different categories. And if, every time you hit an account that is marking the GL as cash flow relevant, it's going to hit any one of those criteria. There are a couple of setups you need to do in order to have that report coming right. But even if some amounts are incorrect, you can always adjust and add manually your numbers if needed. So that report is more flexible in that regards. Just quickly to go some of few of the options. So if you go to the GL accounts and we looked at the cash at bank, the cash flow relevant is determined what is going to be presented in that report. And every time basically you hit that account, either with a journal entry or incoming, outgoing payments, deposits, you will have a choice from list which line items it's going to be relevant. And there are system definitions what will be the default line items where the transaction will hit. So if I'm going to the general settings of the system, there is a cash flow tab under the general settings where you can define if it's mandatory or not to have a line item in the cash flow report, and what will be the defaults when you do incoming or outgoing payments, to which line item of the statement of cash flow it's going to go, and you can choose any of those. When you do transactions to those specific GL accounts, those line items will be available to select as well. And you can have warnings with no assignments, you can have mandatory fields and things of that nature. So I don't want to go too deep because I know most of our customers are using SQL environment, but there is the third option of the HANA cash flow forecast that allow you, like the first reports, to define your certainty level with drill down and a better graphical view of your cash flow. The next report is the Receivable Aging report.
Thanks, Oren. So this is starting into our business partner reports. This is one of the reports that I really think is pretty valuable. So this customer receivables aging report is basically going to help give you a picture of your financial health when it comes to some of your customers, and kind of help evaluate the credit quality of some of your customers. So you can see, you know, for an example, maybe you have some customer that's having difficulty paying their invoices. It'll help you, you know, kind of give you some insight into that. So let me open that up for you.
And it's available through the business partners reports, but also from the financial accounting reports.
There we go. So for the customer receivables aging report, you have some options here depending on what you'd like to set your aging date as. You can also set your different intervals for aging, and that might run a pretty big one. Okay, perfect. So here's an example of what it's going to look like. One of the most beneficial features, I think, with this customer receivables aging report is the ability to batch send aging statements to your customers. So say we want to send a few for this one, you can just control-click and select maybe some overdue invoices that you'd like to send out an aging report for. And then here you just go File, Send, and Business One Mailer. And that way it sends them out all individually. You know, Intel will get their own, Amazon will get their own, that kind of thing. So the only thing that you need to do to be able to set that up is just select email groups in these business partners, and then you'll be able to send it out to a specified email group.
We'll also show you what are the email addresses it will go to. You can define your subject and body, what will be sent in the email. So if you have a business partner that doesn't have the definition, you will see that here. Also, if you want to
Exactly.
look how the report looks, you could define a preview, and then you have different options. For example, the customer statement report will look like that. It's a crystal reports design. In this specific one, it's sometimes a little bit tricky to modify it, but it can be modified in terms of additional details to present and things of that nature. One more thing to mention maybe here, and I'm on the recent version of 9.3, is that the ability to connect vendors. So if you have a client that is also a vendor, you could present in the aging either the customer receivables or the vendor's liability aging. That is very similar. You can present the connected vendors as well. So if a client is connected to a vendor, you can send them one statement that including both business partners operation. And the definition is really easy to connect the customer with a vendor. It's basically under the accounting tab of the business partner, they added in 9.3 the connected vendor option. Any questions so far? Maybe one last thing to mention, the aging date. The aging date is flexible, so you can run it, hey, what does it look like today, my aging? But if you need to backdate it for the end of previous year, things of that nature, you can absolutely do that by just changing the date, and it will give you what was your aging based on last year. Something very important to mention, sometimes you do not display customer with zero balance. So if that customer had a balance in that past date, you want to make sure that this one is unchecked, so it will show all customers and display also the ones that today have a zero balance. Any questions? Anyone? Feel free also to write in the chat as we are looking at it. Okay. With no questions, we will go into the next section. The next section is overview. And quick question: do we have Christina from Gamard on the line? So let's go into the activity report. And the reason I ask is because Christina, one of our clients from Gamma Scientific, did an excellent presentation last week during this week during the Biz One event, and brought some great examples around that. But let's go into the activity first and see what is an activity. SAP allow you to record anything happens in the business as related to record things that are happening or conversations or email with customer, things of that nature. The best way to do that is record an activity. And you can record an activity from the business partner. You can record an activity that will link to a sales order just using a right click in the sales order, and it will open that. It will link automatically the document, the appropriate sales order and the number and everything. You can add notes, client requested a discount, things of that nature. All of that is funneled into one big report that you can execute. We have some clients using that to record, for example, expense of their sales employees. So all the sales employees enter their expenses here. So they added additional UDFs in order to have the expense type and the expense amount. So that could be used to present so many different business activities and to record them. And the nice thing is that when you look at the business partner, you can always either, for example, if I bring one of the customers, right, and let's choose Intel Corporation, for example. If we look at their activities, if you look at all what the business partner is doing in their activities and account balance, you can also view all the related activities. So that's really quickly show you everything that was done with them, everything that was promised to them in terms of discounts or bad products, return, things of that nature. Some of them already handled, so we can display only the open. In this case, everything is open. You can drill down into the activity itself to see what was done, what was the subject and things of that nature, who handled that. You can have a reminder, so that will show up as in your message and alerts, and will prompt when it's due to handle activities scheduled for today, for example. So it tells you exactly what you need to do, and you can define it per person. You can assign it to different people and things of that nature. Also, this report can be customized in terms of what you see in the reports using the form settings. So you could define what will be presented. Maybe you want the handle by to be, just after the number, so you can sort the order and things of that nature. Okay. In addition, if you have any document that is associated with that transaction, you don't have to necessarily drill down to the activity, change tab. You can immediately from here double click, and that will get you into the specific transaction associated with that activity. Okay. So let's look at the report itself. The two reports that I really like are the My Activity, that shows me all my activities, and I can display to show just the open or not, just display the service call as well and things of that nature. But the really strong report is the activity report, because then you can run it based on anything. You can track your returns, you can track your complaints, you can track the compliments customer give you. It's just a matter to define the types and the subject, and you can do that by yourself. You don't need a consultant for that. You just define those, and then you can execute the report between dates, or for a specific customer group, or a specific vendor group, or all the activities have been handled by a specific user or a specific employee. Once I run it, I can get a really robust report with all the information related to that instance. Does that make sense? Any questions? Okay. So with that being said, we're going to go into one report that related to the pipeline and sales opportunities. Beth?
Thanks. So this is our last business partner report that we're going to share with you. It's the Opportunities Pipeline report. And this is a really powerful reporting tool for sales managers primarily. So if they want to see, the company's current sales pipeline at a company level view, it allows you, to see it at the company level view and see where all of your opportunities are. And then if you do want to see it, if you want to sit down with your salespeople and want to see it, sorry, I'm terrible at multitasking. There we go. So if you do want to sit down with your sales employees and see, where their opportunities are at an individual level, you can also do that. So, you're sitting down with Brad Thompson here, and then you can work on, moving forward your leads, moving forward things like that. So, yeah, I mean, Oren, any other comments on that one, on the opportunities list?
Yeah, it allows you the drill down. So for example, if we are looking at the opportunities that Brad Thompson have, we can take a look here. We can look at only specific stages. Those stages are definable. So each company will have different stages and different closing percentage, and that allows the system to calculate your expected total. And then you can go through with that sales guy and look at, okay, we are in first meeting with those 3 prospects. Let's drill down to the opportunity. Let's see what was the last time you talked to them. What's their potential amount, interest level, different stages that you executed with them, maybe different documents, and that allow you to flow into the sales process when they became a client and start transacting with them, sales orders, quotation, and things of that nature. It allows you to specifically look at specific business partners, specific BPs, or specific dates. But in addition, if I refresh that and see all our leads, you can also filter the table or go into the dynamics. So that will allow you to see between the time frame that define how those opportunities been handled, what was won, what was lost, and things of that nature. So with that being said, any questions, or are we ready to move into the inventory reports? Guess we're ready.
Perfect. So the first two inventory reports we are going to show you are actually similar or sometimes mistaken for one another, but there's, oh, sorry, the screen went away. But there's some pretty distinct differences between the two reports. So this first one, the inventory audit report, that report's going to give you an audit trail for all of your inventory transactions as they move through the chart of accounts. So it's going to explain to you all your value changes in your inventory accounts versus the second one, the second inventory report we're going to talk about is the inventory valuation simulation. So that inventory audit report is going to actually give you your values in whatever costing method you currently use versus that inventory valuation simulation is used for what if scenarios or to kind of help you see if you were to change your costing method, what effect that would have. So the inventory audit report here, you can select by warehouses, you can filter by different items or specific item groups, things like that, and then of course put in a date range. Now just to mention, the only things that aren't going to be captured by this report, so we're going to have, of course, any non-inventory items aren't going to be captured in this report. Dropship warehouses aren't included. Service type documents aren't included. And then any manual journal entries you make to inventory accounts aren't going to be factored into this report.
Okay.
So, oh, sorry, Oren, were you going to say something?
No, I just wanted to say that many of our customers try to compare their GL account number into that report, and this is the right thing to do, but you gotta execute that in a specific way. And as Beth mentioned, if you do any manual journal entry to inventory account, first you probably don't want to do that, but if you did do that, the discrepancy is probably going to be just that, okay? And then maybe we'll go back into the selection criteria, and we can talk a little bit about how to execute that so it match with your GL. The other thing maybe to mention is like for every item you can expand, but you can expand one by one. So if we look at that item, that show us all the transaction between the dates that got us to that value. So that was the opening balance, and then all the in and outs that affected my inventory based on that valuation method, how it affected what value, not just how much quantity, but what value got into our and hit our GL account, and what deduct from that GL account. And obviously you can always drill down to see if it was an invoice or it was receipt from production or issue for production and things of that nature. So all the inventory transaction that ever happened to this item between those dates are going to be here. You can send to Excel, you can print it, and so forth. Just to mention, so you could select also specific account if you want to compare to a specific GL account. It's hard to see with that. You can always click on that and make it larger. You can also summarize that by GL account or by item. Earlier we saw that by item, but you can also summarize by GL account. And when you compare it, it's important to look at the posting date, right? Because the system date is when it's created, but the posting date is the date you put on the transaction. So make sure you put it right. If you do give a big range, make sure you do that maybe after hours, because this is a heavy report and sometimes it takes time to execute that. So maybe before lunch or before the end of the day to run it so you don't have to wait for that report.
Good tip. And then, so if there's no questions are there any questions about the inventory audit report at all? Okay. So then the inventory valuation simulation is kind of the other side of this. Let me see. There it is. Okay, so the inventory valuation simulation, like we said, if you're, say, you have a first in, first out method, costing method, but you want to see, you want to check your inventory valuation as moving average. So this will let you compare against what you normally use, and then give you a different picture. It also, running this inventory valuation simulation report is also going to update your last evaluated price list.
Yep. Yeah, it's important to mention that this report, the inventory valuation simulation, is not supposed to match with your GL account. The audit report is supposed to match with your GL account. And like Beth said, the valuation simulation is just to simulate a different types of valuation or run it by a specific price list and things of that nature. And the last evaluated report, one of the price lists from SAP, is going to be updated based on the results of that specific report. Any questions? I have a question. Karina, I have a question. Her question is, there something else that we could update the last evaluated price list beside this report? Good question. So just to show you the price list. So there are a few price lists with SAP Business One. There are two that are grayed out. They are being updated automatically by the system and all your price lists that you created. The last purchase price has been updated every time there is inventory incoming transaction. The last evaluated price has been updated every time we run the inventory valuation report. And to your question, Karina, this is the only thing that updates the last evaluated price, so it cannot be updated through another mechanism. Any other questions? Okay. So with no more questions, we will go into the next topic. So we talked about the audit, we talked about...
I'm sorry, can you hear me? Sorry for interrupting. I still have one question. Is there any way that I can see when was the last evaluated price updated, or maybe who ran that report? A little bit of an historical part. We have been having challenges with that particular report, and we wanted to decipher who is updating the last evaluated price. Thank you.
This is a really good question.
Yeah, that's a good question.
I am not sure, but I will update you. I don't think so, but I need to reach out to SAP to see if there is anything that I might be missing. I will get back to you later today, and maybe we'll add that also to the blog post we're going to create around this session today. So this is a really good question. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. So with that being said, we're going to go into the last inventory report we wanted to talk about. Cover that really quickly is the inventory posting report. This is the one report that will give you everything you wanted to know about inventory movement. From an item perspective, BP perspective, by location, by warehouse, between dates. Again, the expanded report, right? The expanded features, which transactions you are looking for, which transactions. So like the general ledger report that you can see everything related to accounting, this report will give you everything you ever wanted to know about any inventory movement, okay? And once you select your selection criteria and you execute it for the specifics, you're going to get the report that is going to show you every movement of every items, again, with the ability to drill down into each one of those elements. Again, the form settings is available to present additional features. If you're using batch or serial numbers or bin location, you can add those into the report, so it will show you the batch numbers or the bin location, and will split those transactions into the different lines. Like with every report, you can copy that table to Excel and continue processing or print that. You know, there is a print layout that you could modify using PLD and things of that nature. Beth, anything to add on this?
I don't think, I think that's good.
Okay. Thank you. So let's go back to the presentation. And we're going to go and talk about sales report. We have maybe 10, 11 more minutes, so we'll try to cover most of the reports. The main one really is the sales analysis. The sales analysis report give you information about sales reporting from every angle that you wish to. Now we cannot modify those out of the box reports, so sometimes queries or custom reports needs to be built, but this gives you the basic and the comparison. Even when you build custom queries, it gives you the opportunity to compare and to make sure your custom queries are accurate from a higher level when you need, UDF information and things of that nature. So let's see how it looks. And just to mention, there is the sales analysis report, but there is also a very similar report called the purchasing analysis, and they work in the very similar way. The sales analysis report allow you to view customer information, to see that as an annual report or quarterly or monthly reports. In most cases, I run it on invoices, but we can look at orders. So you can see all today's transactions, all year-to-date transactions. You can see that in an individual way, customer by customer, or by group display. So the group of the customers, as defined in your system. You can have a total by customer, or by a blanket agreement. You can run it between dates, and you can choose a specific customer, group of customer, properties of the customer, things of that nature. That will give you basically, in this case, it's a monthly report that I decided to present, and I'm hiding months with no data, but I can uncheck that as well. It shows you each customer, what was their sales for each month, what is the gross profit. You can always double click to filter to see that from the biggest customer to the smallest customer and things of that nature. I can also run it as an annual report, so it's not month by month. It shows me everything done in 2018. And I can see that Intel has had 20 invoices. I can double click on the line number to show the details of those invoices, and again, drill down into the specific invoice. And if you ever see any issue with the gross profit, you can always, if you're authorized to it, you can always update the gross profit, and it's also can be updated using some DTW. In addition to that, you can also view the same thing from an item perspective. So, you want to analyze your item sales from annual, monthly, quarterly report. You can do item, each item separately, or you can do secondary selection to choose, I want to see the item sold for a specific customer or for a group of customers. Or you know what, let's do even better. Let's do the total by customer or total by sales employee. Okay, so a lot of options to analyze your sales. And when I run it that way, I can see every customer and their product. So I see Intel Corporation and all the items sold to them, what's the quantity, what's the sales amount for each one, what's the gross profit, and so forth with the rest of the customers. I can double click to see that by account. And again, also here, different reporting options available. In this case, both Crystal reports and PLD are available as a base default. And also from a sales employee, so if you do commissions and things of that nature, every transaction have the sales employee. So if you run relatively simple commissions, you can use the sales analysis to analyze the sales of each sales employee. So if you want to see what was the commission for the previous months, so I'm going to do 9/1 until 9/30 and run that report, and then I know each sales employee, what was their sales amount, and can drill down into those transactions if needed. Saying that, most of our customers actually need a special query for commissions because every client executes commissions a little bit differently. Any questions so far about sales analysis report? Okay. So the second report that is really similar is the purchase analysis, and I will let Beth talk about it.
Thanks. So as Orn mentioned, we have this purchase analysis report that's really, really similar to the sales analysis report. Kind of the same thing. Instead of customers, items, and sales employees, we have vendors, items, and sales employees. And it just helps give you that same view or the same level of analysis that the sales analysis does, but for your purchasing side.
Thank you, Beth. And because it works exactly the same, we're just gonna move forward with the next report, which is the open items list.
Perfect. So this open items list is going to help you basically track the status of any of your sales and purchasing documents. It'll help you see, if you have some customers that still need to pay for their invoices, or if you have some vendors that haven't provided your items yet, things like that. You can also, one of the handy features here for production orders, which is really helpful, you can filter either by, thank you. So you can filter here and see, okay, any of your released production orders, or if you have some planned production orders, you can go ahead and select them. Say we want to release all of these planned production orders. So from here, then we can just, en masse, go ahead and release those production orders. Another handy tip that we learned also, thanks to Christina for the great tip, but if you have a long list here, say, you have more than 500 sales orders on a list. So in a test environment, we may not have that, but if we have over 500 open sales orders, if you press Control, Tab, and End, it'll load all of the documents. So this list won't by default load more than 500, but you can then have it load 500, and then from there you can filter and sort the tables.
Right. So if you have more than 500 results, you will see that filter table is not going to be available because it always allows you to filter by specific customers and things of that nature. So if you do not see that filter button available, just do the Control tab and it will present all transactions.
And then the last thing that I wanted to mention here too, say even for sales orders, do you want to go ahead and, just like the production orders, say you want to cancel some en masse, you can go ahead and do that straight from here.
Okay. Thank you, Beth. And you can do that by going into the data and cancel everything altogether.
Yep.
For example, it happens in many cases, for example, when you have sales quotation and you want to cancel the old ones or close them, you can go into the data and batch close or cancel all of those. Okay? And that will do that in a batch way.
Yep.
We have a question about the previous report from Natalie. So Natalie, feel free to ask a question or to type it, and we'll address it. So additional reports options, I don't think we have the time nor we plan to cover them today. But just so you know the additional reporting options, there are three options that we wanted to mention. One of them is the drag and relate functions that allow you from the business partner on the transaction to drag and drop it into the relevant area. So you can see, for example, you're in a business partner and you want to see all the sales order, all the sales invoices, you can just drag and drop it and that will show you all the invoices. Okay? The second thing is the Excel connection. The Excel connection allows you to connect your Excel directly to your SQL server, and it's out of the box. You don't need to do any setup for that. You just need the right access and to work with your IT department in order to be real-time connected from Excel and to do pivot and all kinds of advanced processing and graphs. Excel, we all have Excel for. So just know that that is available, and with just a tiny bit of technical expertise, you could really do amazing things like Karina and Christina have done. And the second thing is Crystal Reports. So Crystal Reports available for all customers, SQL or HANA, allow you to do a lot of nice presentations with, again, some technical knowledge. We have on our YouTube channel, we have on our website, we have a lot of materials around Crystal Reports and training materials, how to do that yourself. But we can also do that for you if you don't want to handle that. But there are also some reports available within SAP Business One. For example, under the sales report, there are a few reports, even Crystal, that came out of the box with SAP Business One. So just so you see how it looks, you know, monthly customer status, allow you to do all those nice selection criteria that SAP come with, and we can define customer warehouses and all that stuff, and get a really nice presentation. It's very flexible in terms of what do we want to do with the data, how to present it, ability to double click and drill down if we wish to. So if you have like a management monthly report or weekly report that needs to be presented in a very specific way, you know, the Crystal Reports is a really strong tool to be able to look at that and drill down and things of that nature. Okay. So we have a question on the purchase analysis. Is there any way to get the number of AP invoice and goods receipts? Yes. So let's look at that. Let's look at the purchase analysis. Purchase analysis report. If I run it for all vendors from the beginning of the year, for example, we see the vendor, they have 8 invoices. Double click on the line number, not drill down to the vendor. Double click on the line number will show you the invoice number, and you can drill down. So that will show you the AP invoice, the good receipts as well. So if I go back and run it not on AP invoice, but the good receipt PO transaction, and click OK, that will, with the drill down, will give us the all the good receipts. If we want to see just all of them and not client by client, we can always do, or vendor by vendor, we can always do a group display, and that may show us less lines. And a follow-up question from Natalie, so I will have to do it separately and then add. Potentially, but you can also create a simple query to present all AP invoices, or even going to the AP invoices and do a search will allow you then to filter between a specific period. So for example, if I wanted to see all my purchasing documents, or all the AP invoice, I can go to AP invoice to go to find mode, and then I can potentially present everything or by vendor, and then you know, filter it out using the filter button. I hope that answered your question, Natalie. So gonna do star. I see all the invoices. That table is fully configurable using the form settings. So if I want to show more data, everything in the AP invoice is available. I'm just gonna randomly select one of the options. And basically, next time I'm searching for AP invoice, I will see all of those. I want to filter the due date here, for example. I can decide due date shows me in range of those specific dates. Okay? Excellent. Okay? And if you want to go one by one, and you know, so that list is available behind the scene, make sure you have the keep visible, so you can double click on an AP invoice, see the result, exit out of that, and the list is still available behind the scene. Or if you don't want it to be available, you can close all by this. Okay? Any other questions? All right, so with that being said, thank you everybody for attending the session. We are always open for suggestions for the future, so feel free to send to me or to Jennifer any requests for additional training or what would you like to see in the future. Thank you everybody. Happy Friday. Have a
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a great weekend.
great weekend, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.